It was in Super Mario Bros. That Nintendo fans saw the beginning of a trend that would be used for 2D Mario games for a long time. For decades, the lovable 2D platformers have been cherished, but lately we've seen with the new Super Mario Bros. Series of games a decline in admiration from fans. I think it's the perfect opportunity to talk about the future of 2D Mario games as we get the port on the Nintendo Switch of New Super Mario Bros. U and New Super Luigi U combined together, and they got the deluxe treatment with this. At least many Nintendo fans scratching their heads and wondering, what's gonna happen to our beloved 2D Mario games? And for some of them wondering, are we ever going to get 2D Mario games the way that we used to? Some original 2D Mario games as opposed to the same new Super Mario Bros. Formula used in every single new release for the last 12 years. So in this video, I'm going to be offering 3 possibilities for what's going to be happening in the future of the 2D Mario games, and I strongly encourage you to leave your thoughts on the future of them in the comment section down below. And also, I realize that some of you guys aren't getting notifications for my new uploads that say you're supposed to be getting them, so if you want to ensure that you're getting notified for a new upload, just click the bell beside the subscribe button and set it to all, and that should be good. With that being said, let's get right into the video. The first possibility that I'm going to be going over here is a change in the format of 2D Mario games. Even before we got New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe on the Nintendo Switch, fans had to have been feeling that there is going to be a change to the format eventually. And it's only amplified further now that that game's on here, considering that we already have a new Super Mario Bros. Styled game on the Switch, and if Nintendo wants to put another 2D Mario game on there, it's going to be a massive risk to put a formula that's been used for the last 12 years, as I mentioned earlier, on the same console that already has one. That's never happened before, and if we're going to get 2 2D Mario platformers on the Nintendo Switch, one has to be different than the other, and that's going to be the newer one. So what kind of forms of innovation will we be getting in a potential new 2D Mario game on the Switch? I'm going to go over some possibilities here. One of them is a graphical style change. This should definitely happen to spice things up a little bit and give it more aesthetic variety, obviously, from the 2D Mario games that we've gotten already. The new Super Mario Bros. Art style is realistic for Mario standards, in my opinion, considering that the models all look pretty good and the backgrounds are nice and solid, and it has some unique level concepts. But what if we got more stylized visuals akin to the Rayman games, for example? Change the complete style of the way the game looks, and even if the game doesn't play too much differently, which I'm sure people don't really want too much of a drastic change, considering that if we like 2D Mario games, we'd sort of like them to stay similar to how they are. It could help cover up some of the fact that the game isn't too different from the previous ones that are already on the console, but because it looks very different, it completely changes people's viewpoints on this game. It's possible that we get a more open world style 2D Mario game, and just what I mean by this is larger levels with multiple objectives in them. I've seen this idea thrown around, and I don't really think it works well for a 2D title, and it's definitely more reserved for the 3D ones. But if Nintendo wants to experiment with something like this, I think it could definitely be very interesting. We already have stuff like red coins packed into the regular 2D Mario levels, and I think that if they were to expand the levels vertically, you'd be able to add much more challenges and give further incentives for people to hop back into the levels the second time. Perhaps you get a reward akin to a moon or a star that we've gotten in more of the sandbox style 3D Mario games for every mission within the level that you complete. So if you get those 8 red coins, you'll get a star. If you make it to the end of the level, you'll get a star. If you beat the boss, you get a star, so on. This could be an interesting idea if done right. I just think it would be very difficult to pull off with a 2D title and the limited space that you have because you don't have access to the third dimension. Now, if it stays in the level format, which has been proven to work, it's why 2D Mario games have such a large following, and I think it would sort of be the best for Nintendo to stay in this form for the 2D Mario titles. Could we be going back to the ways of Mario 3? What I mean by this is shorter levels, but have many more levels. This is very much the opposite of the last point that I was talking about, and I think that emphasizes how vague the future is for 2D Mario titles, and how little people know about what's going to happen to them. It could be going in a completely different direction than fans think it is. I personally loved Mario 3 and would love the style of levels to go back to the way that they were. You could rush through some of the levels in 30 seconds and just move on to the next one. There's lots of aesthetic variety because there's so many different levels to go through. Longer levels are nice, and it's one of the reasons that I do enjoy the vast majority of the new Super Mario Bros. Titles. They offer longer levels than many of the other 2D Mario games. But it would be a nice change of pace if that's what Nintendo wants to go for, to go for a shorter level format. What's going to be the deal with power-ups in a new 2D Mario game? How will they really innovate? Just make new concepts for power-ups that are extraordinarily interesting? Would they implement Cappy in a way in this type of game, where you take advantage of the enemies in the overworld and use them as the power-ups to make it more unique? Many possibilities, obviously. I don't think Cappy would work as well in a 2D environment, because some of these ideas are just taking some of the concepts that work in a 3D Mario game and moving them over to a 2D Mario game. It's not just that simple. I'm sure that some of the geniuses at Nintendo would be able to make something like this work. They've been able to craft masterpieces in the past with video games, and I don't think that they've lost that touch at all, considering that we've gotten games like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey from some of Nintendo's teams. Those have been fantastic, and they're recent games. Nintendo has the ability to craft something unique and interesting and make it different, and that's why I prefer Nintendo to the other video game companies out there, and I'm sure most Nintendo fans feel that way for the same reason. One last idea for a change in 2D Mario games before we move on to the next point. What if they add a second section to the game? And this is something that I'd really like. I enjoyed in 3D Land how for the second part of the game, this is after you go through the first 8 worlds, there are 8 more special worlds that you could experience as Luigi this time around. And I don't think they'd character lock you in a 2D Mario game like this, but if they did, then you could just add 8 more worlds to the game. Now, obviously not being original worlds, we're asking for a little bit more content there than I think that Nintendo would want to provide us, but they've always provided us in recent 2D Mario titles with some special world, a World 9 or a World Star or something like that. So, what if they take some of the original concepts that they put into those World 9 levels, spread them across this 8 new worlds that you're going to be getting here, and make the majority of the levels within this second portion of the game, all these special worlds like in 3D Land, just make some of them harder versions of the existing levels in the game. It's kind of like New Super Mario Bros. U and New Super Luigi U. It's a very similar concept. I just like a lot more new levels sprinkled throughout there, and I think that would make a much more enjoyable experience. And going back to one of the ideas that I mentioned earlier, you could have some unique objectives for these levels implemented in here as well. Perhaps instead of playing through the level to get to the finish, you collect the star coins and then that's your objective. What if you reverse the level and you have to traverse opposite way throughout it? There's so many unique concepts they could implement into a game like this, and I think 2D Mario could definitely survive by changing things up and using some of the ideas that I listed there, or even more things that you could potentially list in the comments below, or Nintendo themselves just think about. Moving on to the second possibility, and this is Super Mario Maker being put on the Nintendo Switch. We could have the same format as the Wii U did for the Switch lineup. They've used a lot of Wii U games, and I'm sure that if they want to put Mario Maker on there, and I think it could work, then you could just implement that, and no need to worry about 2D Mario games for the rest of the Switch's life cycle. People could make their own levels. What's wrong with that? And I agree. It's a very fun concept to have Super Mario Maker on the Switch, and I love the creative possibilities. However, there's a different vibe when you play a 2D Mario game that's built for you, a custom-built one for you. All the levels are designed by game developers in a way that's supposed to make you enjoy them as a coherent experience, and they're not gimmicky like a lot of the great levels are in Mario Maker, which means that the style of the levels that you find in both of those two games are completely different. It's very rare to find a level in Mario Maker that's in the traditional style of a 2D Mario level. Again, I love both. A lot of the concepts implemented in some of my favorite Mario Maker levels are things you'd never dream of seeing in a standard 2D Mario game, but sometimes I just like the regular experience from a 2D Mario game. Anyways, if Mario Maker is put onto the Switch, let's discuss the possibilities that we're going to have surrounding that. How it would work is I think they would probably promote it as a build it on the go and then play it on the TV sort of game. This is because you could use touchscreen when you're on the go, and then when you're playing on the big TV, you could even have multiple people experience levels this time as opposed to the Wii U version if you want. Just have that fun Mario experience on the TV while you build the levels on the go, and I think it'd be fine to market the game that way. But I'm sure you could allow them to build levels by using the motion controls involving the Joy-Cons. It'd be pretty complicated to create a system that works and is enjoyable throughout that way, but as long as they use the right forms of marketing here surrounding this game, I think Mario Maker could definitely be a hit once again, especially if they include a lot of new features in it, which I talked about in a previous video. But what if we don't get a major shift to how existing 2D Mario titles work, or Mario Maker on the Switch? Does that leave us with the end of 2D Mario games? And that's the third main concept that I'm going to be touching on in this video. What if we don't get any more 2D Mario games? That is, until the next main Nintendo console comes out, and I know we're probably talking about 2024 and stuff like that here, and that's far beyond what I wanted to talk about. I get that the things I'm talking about in this video are pretty long term, at least a year or two before any of these concepts really materialize. but that's way further along than I would think. And if we're not going to be talking about that far down, could we be seeing the end of 2D Mario games for a long time here? Nintendo already has a 2D Mario game on the Switch, and on any home console, there's only been one 2D Mario game for that console. The dilemma with the Switch is that the first one being put on here is a port, and that hasn't happened yet. But we're not even just talking about regular 2D Mario platformers here. We've got Yoshi, which is coming out soon. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is already out, and that's an amazing 2D platformer. Are people just gonna get tired of the 2D platforming format and not want to play any new 2D Mario game when it comes out? Or does Nintendo just think there's too many on there and won't even bother developing one? Could Nintendo just switch over to level-based 3D Mario games like 3D World and 3D Land did? You could just use some of the assets that are within Mario Odyssey and stick it in a level-based format, and then just craft a game based on that. You never know what Nintendo's going to do with this type of thing, and it could either mean the end, it could mean the expansion, making it better, or it could just mean more of the same is being brought back. That's the fun of speculation, and that's what I really need you guys to answer in the comment section down below. What do you think about this? Because we could be seeing the end of 2D Mario platformers for a while, or we could not be. A little bit earlier on, I mentioned my video about new Mario Maker features, and if you want to see that one, click the link on the left side of the screen, and I also have another video recommended for you on the right side of the screen. Remember to subscribe, as I mentioned earlier, so that you don't miss any new Nintendo uploads, and I'll see you next time.